During the filming of The Chosen Season 5, something unexpected happened. Scenes that were meant to recreate history began affecting the people behind the cameras in ways no script could predict. Actors didn't just perform emotional moments, they experienced them. Crew members who came to work as professionals left questioning what they had witnessed. At the center of it all was the recreation of the Last Supper and Jesus' arrival in Jerusalem. Moments that hold enormous spiritual meaning for billions of believers. But what unfolded during filming raised an even deeper question. Can retelling an ancient story still transform lives today? This is the story of what happened when art, faith, and history collided in ways no one on set was fully prepared for. The day began like any other production day. Lights were positioned carefully, cameras were calibrated, the crew reviewed schedules and prepared for long hours of work. From the outside, it looked like a normal filming environment, structured, professional, and predictable. But inside the set built to recreate ancient Jerusalem, something slowly began to shift. The scene scheduled for filming was one of the most recognized moments in Christian history, the Last Supper. For many productions, this scene is approached as a technical challenge. Staging, lighting, blocking, and dialogue timing. For the team working on The Chosen, it quickly became clear that this moment carried a different weight. Jonathan Roumie, the actor portraying Jesus, knew long before filming started that this scene would require something deeper than performance skill. He understood that millions of viewers would not simply watch this moment as entertainment. For many, it represented the foundation of their faith. The responsibility was overwhelming. Roumie approached the filming process in a way that surprised even some of his colleagues. Instead of focusing only on memorizing lines and rehearsing gestures, he prepared spiritually. He spent time in prayer. He sought guidance from his spiritual director, who remained close to him during filming. Roumie later explained that portraying Jesus, especially during the Last Supper, felt less like stepping into a role and more like carrying a historical and spiritual responsibility that extended far beyond television storytelling. He believed that if the scene felt hollow or purely theatrical, viewers would immediately sense it. His goal was not to imitate a familiar image of Jesus, but to communicate the emotional and spiritual significance of a moment believed by Christians, to represent the beginning of a new covenant between God and humanity. That sense of responsibility gradually spread across the entire cast. Before filming officially began, the production team organized something unusual for a television series. The actors were invited to participate in a traditional Passover meal. The gathering was guided by Rabbi Jason Sobel and held inside the synagogue set constructed for the series. This was not simply a cultural demonstration. The actors were taught the historical meaning behind each element of the ritual. They learned the proper seating positions around the table. They practiced using the correct hands for ceremonial actions. They studied the blessings spoken during the meal and the sequence in which each part of the celebration unfolds. At first, some actors approached the experience as research. They took notes, asked technical questions, and tried to understand how their characters would behave historically. But as the meal progressed, many began to realize that the ritual carried emotional weight they had not expected. The Passover meal recalls the ancient story of the Exodus, when the Israelites marked their doorposts with sacrificial blood so that death would pass over their homes. For actors preparing to portray followers of Jesus during the Last Supper, this symbolism created an emotional connection to the events they were about to film. They began to understand how early followers of Jesus may have interpreted his words and actions during that final meal. Dallas Jenkins, the creator and director of The Chosen, later reflected that he had grown up hearing biblical stories, but had never fully grasped how the Old Testament traditions connect to the events surrounding Jesus' crucifixion. Watching the cast experience the Passover meal helped him recognize how those ancient traditions form a narrative that Christians believe points toward Jesus' sacrifice. For many of the actors, this realization made the upcoming filming feel more personal. They were no longer just portraying historical figures sitting around a table. They were stepping into a moment that, for billions of believers, represents sacrifice, loyalty, confusion, and love. When filming finally began, the emotional atmosphere on set felt noticeably different. The Last Supper scenes were filmed over 6 consecutive days. By the second day, several actors noticed that rehearsals began to feel unnecessary. Emotional reactions that would normally require repeated takes or detailed directions started happening naturally. Noah James, who portrays Andrew, later described how he found himself reacting emotionally without planning to do so. He explained that instead of thinking about how his character should respond, he simply reacted to what he was witnessing around him. He described the experience as something internal awakening rather than something externally directed. Between filming takes, the cast often gathered together quietly. Some embraced, others sat in silence. Tears appeared without warning. From a distance, it might have looked like physical exhaustion from long production hours, but those present recognized that something deeper was affecting the group. Elizabeth Tabish, who portrays Mary Magdalene, experienced one of the most emotionally demanding moments during these filming days. Her character is given scenes in which she interacts with Jesus not as a distant teacher, but as someone who allows himself to be cared for and served. Tabish later explained that filming those scenes required her to access emotions she had not anticipated. By the end of one filming day, she reported being physically dehydrated from crying throughout multiple takes. She emphasized that the emotional reactions were not directed by the script alone. The environment created by the entire cast contributed to the experience. Watching fellow actors express vulnerability made it difficult for anyone to remain emotionally distant from the scene. The emotional intensity extended beyond dialogue. Small gestures, passing bread, sharing wine, or exchanging quiet glances across the table often became the moments that affected the actors most deeply. These silent interactions helped them imagine how followers of Jesus might have felt during what they did not yet realize would be their final meal together. As filming continued, the sense of time seemed to blur for many participants. Some actors later described losing awareness of cameras, lighting rigs, and production schedules. Their attention focused entirely on the emotional relationships unfolding within the scene. What surprised the production team most was that these reactions were not limited to the performers. Members of the technical crew began experiencing emotional responses as well. Camera operators, sound engineers, and lighting technicians occasionally stepped away from their stations to regain composure. Director Dallas Jenkins sometimes struggled to call the end of a scene because he found himself emotionally affected by what he was watching unfold through the monitor. Even individuals who did not identify as religious reportedly approached Jenkins privately after filming days to describe how the scenes had affected them. Some admitted they had never experienced that type of emotional response while working on a production before. Others struggled to explain exactly why the scenes affected them so strongly. For Jenkins, these reactions reinforced his belief that the story being portrayed carries a unique emotional power that extends beyond cultural or religious boundaries. As the Last Supper filming progressed, many participants began describing the experience using language that surprised them. Words like performance and production felt insufficient. Several cast members began describing the set as a place where storytelling and personal reflection overlapped in unexpected ways. By the time filming for The Last Supper concluded, the cast and crew sensed that they had completed something far more demanding than a typical television sequence. Yet the most visually dramatic scenes were still ahead. The production was preparing to recreate one of the most public and celebratory moments in the gospel narrative, the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. None of them expected that scene to affect them just as deeply, but in an entirely different way. After the emotional intensity of filming The Last Supper, the production shifted toward a completely different type of scene. The moment Jesus enters Jerusalem while crowds welcome him with celebration and praise. On paper, the scene required logistical coordination more than emotional preparation. Hundreds of extras would fill the streets. Costumes, props, and crowd choreography would need to be carefully managed. It was designed to be visually powerful, energetic, and loud. Yet, once again, something unexpected unfolded. The production assembled more than 600 extras to recreate the crowd that welcomed Jesus into the city. The atmosphere on set immediately felt different from the quiet intimacy of the Last Supper scenes. Instead of candlelit tension and whispered dialogue, the environment filled with shouting, singing, movement, and celebration. Palm branches waved. Dust rose beneath the movement of feet and animals. Voices echoed across the reconstructed streets of Jerusalem. Jonathan Roumie mounted the donkey prepared for the scene. From a technical perspective, his task seemed simple. Ride slowly through the crowd while maintaining a calm and reflective expression. But as filming began, the emotional energy surrounding him quickly became overwhelming. The extras were instructed to shout phrases recorded in the Gospels, welcoming Jesus as the Son of David and proclaiming him as a king. For Roumie, hearing hundreds of voices shouting those words created an experience he had not anticipated. The sound surrounded him completely. The energy of the crowd felt real, immediate, and intense. He later described the moment as deeply disorienting in a powerful way. For a brief period, he felt as though he was no longer simply performing a historical reenactment. Instead, he imagined what it might have felt like for Jesus to enter Jerusalem, knowing that celebration would soon turn into rejection and suffering. Roumie explained that he tried to hold on to that emotional contradiction, the mixture of public celebration and internal awareness of coming betrayal. He believed that capturing that tension would allow viewers to understand the complexity of that biblical moment. According to Christian belief, the triumphal entry represents both the recognition of Jesus' authority and the beginning of events that would lead to his execution. While Roumie focused on maintaining emotional authenticity, the production team faced their own unexpected reactions. The scale of the crowd scene created an energy that spread through the entire set. Extras who initially approached their roles as background performers began reacting emotionally to the atmosphere around them. Some later described feeling unexpectedly connected to the story they were helping to recreate. The emotional effect was not limited to visible performers. Crew members responsible for coordinating crowd movement reported feeling moved simply by watching the scale of the moment unfold. Many had worked on large productions before, but few had experienced a crowd scene that carried such emotional intensity rather than simple spectacle. Director Dallas Jenkins monitored the scene from behind the camera, attempting to balance technical direction with the emotional momentum building across the set. He later admitted that controlling the timing of filming became difficult because he did not want to interrupt moments that felt authentic and spontaneous. The emotional reactions of both performers and extras created scenes that felt less choreographed and more organic. As filming progressed, the production team began noticing a pattern. Scenes centered on major biblical events were generating reactions that extended far beyond professional performance expectations. Participants repeatedly described feeling connected to something larger than the production itself. Some members of the crew approached Jenkins privately after filming the triumphal entry. Several admitted they did not consider themselves religious or particularly interested in spiritual topics. However, they described feeling deeply affected by the emotional unity that developed among cast, extras, and crew during the scene. A few described the experience as difficult to explain using professional or technical language. For Jenkins, these reactions reinforced his belief that historical storytelling can carry emotional and cultural power that transcends entertainment. He believed that audiences might experience a similar connection when watching the completed scenes. While the large-scale public scenes created emotional intensity through celebration and movement, Roumie soon faced another personal challenge that extended beyond filming entirely. Immediately after completing the Last Supper scenes, Roumie was scheduled to speak at the National Eucharistic Congress, a major gathering focused on Christian teachings surrounding communion. The timing created an unexpected conflict. Roumie is known for remaining fully immersed in filming during production seasons. He typically avoids leaving the set to maintain emotional continuity with his role. When he realized that the conference would take place during filming, he initially considered canceling his appearance. The idea of stepping away from the production during one of its most emotionally demanding periods felt professionally risky and personally difficult. However, as filming progressed, he began to reconsider. Roumie later explained that the filming experience itself became the reason he decided to attend. After spending nearly a week portraying the Last Supper, he felt uniquely prepared to speak about the spiritual symbolism of communion. He described feeling as though he had not simply studied or memorized the event, but had emotionally lived within its storytelling framework. When he eventually spoke at the conference, he described the experience as surprisingly natural. Rather than delivering prepared speeches or theological explanations, he spoke about the emotional weight of portraying Jesus during the Last Supper and how the experience changed his personal understanding of communion. For Roumie, the connection between acting and personal faith became inseparable during that period. He later described the entire sequence of filming and public speaking as an example of timing that felt beyond his personal planning. He interpreted the sequence of events as meaningful alignment rather than coincidence. Meanwhile, the rest of the cast continued reflecting on their experiences filming the final days leading toward Jesus' betrayal. Several actors described feeling challenged not only professionally but emotionally. Portraying characters who misunderstood or struggled with Jesus' teachings required them to explore emotions such as fear, confusion, loyalty, and doubt. Paras Patel, who portrays Matthew, explained that some of his strongest emotional reactions occurred during scenes where the script itself seemed simple. He described moments where emotional responses appeared without warning, particularly when observing the reactions of other cast members. He emphasized that the emotional atmosphere often developed organically rather than through scripted direction. Many actors later described the filming environment as unusually collaborative. Instead of focusing on individual performances, they began concentrating on maintaining emotional connection with one another. Scenes often felt like shared experiences rather than isolated character portrayals. As Season 5 moved closer to completion, the production team recognized that they were preparing to present viewers with more than a retelling of biblical events. They believed they had captured moments shaped by genuine emotional responses from those involved in the storytelling process. The scenes depicting the final days of Jesus' public ministry, including celebration, intimacy, and approaching betrayal, were designed to invite viewers into an experience rather than simply presenting historical reconstruction. Jenkins repeatedly expressed his hope that audiences would feel emotionally connected to the story regardless of their religious background. For many involved in the production, one realization became increasingly clear. Stories that have been told for thousands of years continue to hold emotional relevance when presented through human experience. The cast and crew found themselves not only recreating ancient events, but rediscovering their emotional impact through modern storytelling. By the end of filming, participants described leaving the set with a sense that they had taken part in something that blurred the line between historical drama and personal transformation. Yet the production team believed that the most important part of the story had not happened on set. It would happen when viewers finally watched the scenes for themselves. What happened during the filming of The Chosen Season 5 cannot be reduced to behind-the-scenes trivia or emotional anecdotes. For the people involved, it became a reminder that some stories carry a weight that time does not erase. When handled with sincerity and respect, they continue to reach people in ways no one fully controls. The cast and crew arrived expecting to create television. Instead, many left having encountered something deeply personal. Actors found themselves emotionally exposed. Crew members discovered reactions they could not explain. Even skeptics acknowledged that what unfolded on set felt different from ordinary production work. At the center of it all were moments that define the Christian story. The Last Supper, the entrance into Jerusalem, the quiet awareness of betrayal approaching. These scenes were not powerful because of visual spectacle alone. They were powerful because they were approached with honesty, humility, and a desire to understand what these moments have meant to generations before us. Season 5 invites viewers into that same space, not to be persuaded or instructed, but to feel. To consider how an ancient story can still reach into modern lives. And that raises a final question worth reflecting on. Which moment in the life of Jesus speaks to you most? And why do you think it still matters today? Share your thoughts below. Conversations like this are part of what keeps these stories alive.